Hello everyone, I am Tacet, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War Birch and Rescue event in which the Shimmerscale is added to the game. So let's get into that. As far as the Shimmerscale, it is coming in with some really good trait stones, red and yellow, and it is an epic, so you'll be able to get them for 200 glory each, 400 at a time. But cheapest you'll ever be able to get these trait stones, and definitely worth stocking up, as there is a lot of things to use this for. Some of them including, for earlier on in the game, Apotheosis, Goblin Rocket, and Valkyrie. And later on in the game, there's 1.5 billion. There's Divinia, there's Gimlet Stormbrew, there's Graveseer, there's King Solinus, there's Harpy Mage, there's Quillin, there's Scurvy Sea Dog, and then of course all the mythics that it's applicable to. So definitely plenty of good things to go and use this trait stone on, so definitely worth considering to stock up. Unfortunately, the troop itself is pretty underwhelming. On paper, this could be good if it had like Empowered or something on it. Unfortunately, it doesn't have Empowered, even though it kind of seems like it should. But it converts brown to red, deals some damage to an enemy, and then it's boosted by the gems converted at a 2-to-1. So for every single 2 brown, it ends up doing 1 additional damage. It is pretty underwhelming. That's even with 20% extra stats, and that's barely going to do anything. It doesn't have half mana start, doesn't have full mana start, doesn't even have Swift for 75%. There's really nothing going for this troop that would ever make it viable for anything. So unfortunately, similar to one of the other Fey Dragons from the Kingdom that looks almost exactly like it, it's pretty much just going to be dead content that you basically just get for the Kingdom upgrade and for the trait stones. As far as our events this week, we do have 20% stats to almost the entire kingdom. It's Bright Forest and Fey, and almost the entirety of the kingdom is Fey, so quite a bit of overlap with 20%. I wouldn't really advise doing this due to how bad the troop is, but you do get twice the amount of trait stones for PvP if you end up using the Shimmerscale there. But again, it's not really that viable, and it's probably going to slow you down way more than the actual benefit. So I'd probably just ignore this week, as it's not going to be worth it. As far as the event keys this week, that is something that is indeed worth it. It is, of course, Bright Forest this week. So if we go and head over to our troops right over here, everything that will be dropped from it is everything except for the Sunken Fleet troops and the Doom. So except for those 5 troops, everything that you see here will be dropped from opening the event keys. The main most noteworthy thing that you probably want to make sure you get your hands on if you don't already have one by opening event keys is a Queen of Tanya, either getting this to Mythic or just getting your first copy if you don't already have it. It's an insanely good troop, has really high full AoE damage, really good on red Guild War or to counter out reds, either or, has extra turn capability if you have a lot of red on the board, and other than that has the best Fairy Fire in the game, being able to do it with 0 turns by simply spamming extra turns to be able to get Fairy Fire onto the opposing team, which ends up making all your casts do 50% more damage. And she's generally used with Yagwe Queen of Tanya and other similar combos, where she's used with other casters that utilize the 50% extra damage that they'll be able to do from their casts. So definitely a great trip to have your hands on, and along the way you'll get a lot of utility troops. Almost this entirety of this kingdom is filled with utility, like Leprechaun for mana generation, Glitterclaw for green and Fairy Fire, Florian for mana drain and green, and other similar things. But your main goal is to get a Queen of Tanya if you don't already have one already, and many Fairy Fire options within this kingdom if you don't already have other options as well. But yes, definitely worth getting event keys if you still don't have her. Next thing on our list is, of course, Raids. Raids, it did come in with a somewhat decent weapon this time around. I didn't think it would be that okay, but it actually does kind of work. We'll be showing Team 4 in a little bit, but it ends up, it's the same kind of premise of a weapon that we've been getting a lot of course. It's just based on a typing, there's extra damage based on it, there's 2 different mana colors. Pretty sure you guys know how these work by now. It's just centered on Bright Forest with a yellow-purple cost with a green-red creation. So this works out pretty good because a lot of things within the kingdom are green or red oriented. So that's basically the perfect colors. And you can just use Leprechaun to be able to feed it up, since you could just empower with that, and it ends up working out quite well. As far as this event, you can pretty much just run Mang Titan and clear it out. You have Leprechaun, which you'll have at your disposal, which you'll be able to use to mana generate for stuff. And we can also go use Mirage Queen, which is from Sunken Fleets, which you get from the faction, not from keys, but we can just simply use that in order to give us some half mana starts there, as well as to give us Doom Skulls, which will allow us to be able to utilize the damage that we have on our Titan there with our Mang. So we'll just go throw that down. This troop, the raid troop this week, ends up entangling all enemies for 12 mana. It's actually kind of similar to that of the Spring Imp, in that it gets to entangle all the enemies. So that's obviously pretty convenient, since, yeah, we don't really have to worry about them hitting us with skulls. So we could do a weird move like this, where we don't really care if we end up getting hit back, because he's going to do almost no damage back to us since he is entangled. So that ends up working out quite nice. We just go and clear that out with Leprechaun, and basically just rinse and repeat until we just poke him down with all the skulls we need until we win. We do have our hero set to Enrage, and the main reason for this is to try to hit through these stone skins. Quite a bit of stone skins this time around, but we don't currently have it, so he's not going to die there, but one more single poke and he'll go down. That's basically all you have to do for the battles. Just use Mang Titan, keep taking Browns, keep throwing down Skull Spam with Mirage Queen, Leprechaun when you need to clear the board or just for mana generation, and of course the Birch Thorn is to keep you safe with Entangle and just to kill out the boss. So yeah, pretty much everything you need to be able to do it relatively cheaply, because Mirage Queen only takes about 1,000 shards on Sunken Fleet or so if you don't already have it already. This is you just get from the events, and Leprechaun is a ultra rare, and if you don't happen to have him, a few event keys would most likely get him as a drop. And of course, Mang Titan is something you just automatically get through progressing through the game. Mang's at around 23 brown red, I believe, and Titan you just need to get to level 40 from completing out the Stormheim Kingdom all the way in the top right. So it should be a relatively easy, straightforward event this time around for raids. And of course, all the teams I'll be showing in this video will be in the description below, as well as in a comment below, for any of you that just want to go and copy-paste them all. Next thing, so all the events we have this week. We actually have no weekend event, kind of. They're going to be starting a new thing every single weekend where we currently have a hole in the events where they're going to be bringing in some of the old pets. The next old pet is going to be the Dragon Kitty. That was that one community-made pet from ages ago, like a year and a half or so at this point. I think it's like a year and a half at this point. But some people, of course, who might have just started playing recently, probably don't have that pet. But they're going to start rotating some of like the really old event pets back into the game slowly over time on those weekends where we don't have events. So even though we don't technically have an event this weekend, we will be having one of the old pets, the Dragon Kitty, coming back. So that's going to be nice. Next thing, as far as other events, Tuesday, of course today, we have the faction event for the Amanithrax Kingdom, the one with all the mushrooms, the one with the nice truffles. For Wednesday, we just have the pet rescue for the Minotaur. On Thursday, we're going to be having the Hierophant class, which is actually the class of this kingdom. So we'll have some synergy there. And of course, no specific event this weekend, though we will be getting a repeat pet of the Dragon Kitty coming back for any of you that haven't gotten it, or just to get more copies of it, just for the sake of getting it. So that's all of our events for this week. As far as the Soulforge, we have, I believe, no troops that were actually worth crafting this week, oddly enough. Not a single thing in here I would really bother ever spending diamonds on. So I would pretty much just ignore all those for this week. Good week to ignore it. However, there is one excessively, ridiculously good thing within weapons, and that is Trickster Shot. This is the first excessively good old event weapon that we have gotten since they have started to do all these old event weapons back into Soulforge. Trickster Shot is basically Mang, but for magic. It destroys an enemy's armor, deals some damage to it, and then increases your magic by 2, and then it's boosted by the amount of armor destroyed at a 3-to-1. So let's say that they have 90 armor, that would end up doing 30 additional magic, so you'd end up gaining 32 magic, as well as tearing all of their armor, as well as doing some damage to them. Do keep in mind with this weapon that the amount of magic that you gain takes place after the damage, not before. So if we were to cast this on someone, it would tear all their armor and then do 37. It would not do the boost ratio off of it, because that would apply after the fact. Though, of course, every subsequent cast that we would then do would have that bonus on it. And we could just keep stacking until the point where we could just one-shot everything with the cast. Normally, Mang is better than this. Mainly because you can take Browns in order to barrier up Mang while still feeding it back into the weapon. But Trickster Shot is occasionally used, most noteworthy probably for Tower of Doom and Bounty Hunter. But you can use it for other things too. Just a little bit of a slower weapon, a little bit slower than that of Mang. But there are niche instances where you might want to specifically use this, particularly if you're using it further back in your line, like second slot or third slot compared to first slot. Because obviously you wouldn't necessarily want to use this in first slot, you'd most likely just want to go Mang in that kind of situation. But great, fantastic weapon to go and get. Highly, 100% advise you do not leave this week without getting this weapon, because it is that good, and it's relatively cheap, just 300 diamonds and a few other things. But yeah, definitely go and get it by the end of this week. Summer Aegis, of course, I'll be showing some teams for that. You can just get this through the events just by throwing 250 gems at it. Tome of Spores, you can get it only on this Tuesday if you want. Probably just get it by buying into the faction, though you can also just buy it here if you want. It's a pretty useless weapon, so you can pretty much ignore that. That'll also be back on a quicker cycle than these other two. This will be back in a couple months, whereas these won't be back to like 6 or 7 months, so you can pretty much just ignore that. But yeah, definitely all in on Trickster Shot. Definitely make sure you go get that by the end of this week. Ideally right now, so you don't forget. Next thing, teams, a bunch of teams, a lot of teams. We have many teams to go show. Only 3 of them I'm actually going to be using right now, though I do have several for all the things related to this week. First thing I want to go over is Summer Aegis. So this is that one weapon that you can get through the event this week for 250 gems, or you can buy it through Soulforge if you don't want to go into the event. But, oh, don't death mark us. What are you doing? But basically, we're going to be building this entire team around the premise of the weapon, of course. And what we're trying to do with this is, of course, 4 times Bright Forest. We end up getting the full boost ratio off of that. We actually end up getting a really substantial amount of magic. Not just that, but every single thing on this team, aside from getting all these Fey bonuses and the Bright Forest bonus that you can see over here with all these little bonuses, we're also getting 20% bonus on every single one of these troops, because all 4 of them are Fey from Bright Forest. So as I mentioned, most of that kingdom is of that typing, so a good majority of that kingdom does have the full 20%. So right over here, I don't believe we have a free turn for that, so I'm just going to take some yellow just to make sure he doesn't have as much alignment. Oh, you know what? Maybe we should have taken that blue. He might actually destroy us here. Better not. I need that weapon. We needed that weapon. Fine, we'll retreat. Of course, he would pick a skull spam option against us. I go fight this one. Let's go try this again. Round 2. So this weapon actually has one particularly unique thing, which I didn't actually go and show yet. But over here, it has a little fairy fire on it. That's normal. A little bit of armor. That's normal. But it has a unique one. Gives 1 mana to all allies. But the unique one causes a random positive stats effect on itself. If I'm not mistaken, no other weapon currently has that. Every single time it casts, it gets a random positive stats effect, which is obviously pretty decent. So we're going to go kill the one with Fairy Fire. That unfortunately didn't go all the way, but we could easily just go and use all the reds that we just created in order to feed right back into that. We could try Fairy Fire all of them if we had alignment on this, but we don't, so we're just going to clear out the board. Hopefully we'll have alignment now, and even if we don't, it shouldn't really matter because I believe that's just that into a poke. Unfortunately, it did get a summon there, so we can't kill it quite yet. We also still don't have the alignment. Not really sure if it's worth going for the skull, so I'm actually just going to explode out the board and hopefully get a better setup. Still 13 plus red, so we can just go for the full AoE there. And that is enough damage to kill, and there we go. But yeah, that one obviously a little bit more smoother. And yeah, ended up working out pretty well. Great way to go and level up Hierophant if you want to go and level that up a little bit before the event itself. And yeah, it's an okay team. Nothing like exceptionally good, obviously, but it gets the job done. And maybe if we get one more better troop. I feel like Glitter Claw is the main thing that needs a replacement from this team. But if we could just get like one other good Bright Forest that would synergize into that slot, probably be good to go. Like if it ever gets a second mythic that might fit in there, this weapon might have a lot of potential. But yeah, again, it's one of those kind of double convert things where it's kind of average when it gets released, though as time goes on and more troops come into the kingdom, could potentially be really, really good. But as it stands, I would just keep it at average. And you have to keep in mind it's performing a little bit better given that everything has 20%. Though we are still getting a lot of bonuses nonetheless because of the pet bonuses as well as the other pet bonus, one for Fae and one for the 4 times Bright Forest. Also, of course, version 4.5 is around the corner in the next few weeks. And one thing that has confirmed, of course, that I can say now is there's going to be more kingdom upgrades that are going to be allowing higher bonuses for whenever you use multiple of the same from a kingdom. So whenever you use 2, 3, or 4 within the same kingdom, you're going to start getting bigger bonuses starting next patch, and even more so depending on how late into the game you are and how far you can get your kingdoms upgraded. And yeah, you're going to be able to get a lot of extra bonuses for using 2, 3, or 4 from the specific kingdom. And for ones that already have pretty decent bonuses like magic, attack, and things that they actually need to utilize, should make them quite substantially stronger. Of course, there aren't too many teams or too many kingdoms where you can build a 4 times team viably, but as more and more troops come into the game, it's going to become more viable for various kingdoms. Anyways, next up, just a version of Trickster Shot team. There's a lot of various ways that you can run it. I personally would never advise running it for PvP. It tends to be something that you throw in to various teams just for the sake of having the damage there. It's not really something you'd want to use for quicker game modes like PvP, mainly because it is definitely not a quick option. But since we don't have anything else to show it for right now, I guess this will work perfectly fine. I guess technically you could use it for raids, but I feel like this raid you would want to go down the Mang route this time around. So basically what we're going to want to do here is go for the highest armor and start just kind of poking them from there. And then eventually get our shots up to a 1-shot to whatever the biggest threat is. So even though this has a higher armor, I'm probably going to hit Nyx next and then go for the Kraken. And the main reason for that is because the Kraken has Devour on it, so it's going to be the biggest threat as far as this battle is concerned. So right here, I'm going to let him have that skull. That's actually not really going to matter. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to let him because we have Hunter's Mark on him. This does end up placing Hunter's Mark. It enchants itself and it places Hunter's Mark on first slot. Those are the two most viable things that it ends up doing. So, yeah, you just keep gaining 2 mana per turn after you've cast it the first time, so it keeps casting over and over again, which is good because you want it to keep casting over and over again because that's how you keep increasing the amount of damage it does. Again, it's slow, but it's pretty steady at winning, if nothing else. Pretty consistent winning weapon, which is why you use it in some of the harder game modes and higher, where stats end up upscaling is generally where you end up using it. So for PvP, obviously, since it doesn't really upscale, normally most of the stuff you're facing is around your level. You don't really need it as much. But for game modes where you're fighting things that are 2 times your stats, 3 times your stats, or even higher than that, that's when this weapon mostly shines in the main instances where you'd want to use it. Right here, we have a little bit of a weird situation. I'm actually going to go for that there and just go get the kill off of Obsidious. Of course, we could use a different tank there if you want, if you don't end up having Obsidious. I'm mainly just having it for the stun and so we can cover the rest of the colors. You can even use Trickster Shot technically as a tank if you really want to, as long as you're using a hero class that has barrier. Normally, if you end up using it, you use it with Plague Lord so you can still gain barrier while also having the, you take green a lot so you end up diseasing the enemy multiple times. And one other team that I wanted to show real quick was actually somewhat from last week, but I wanted to show it on the Monday video. And that is the Plunder and Peril. Of course, last Friday we ended up getting the new hero class of the Corsair. Still trying to level it up some. I was doing it without gems because we're going to be spending a lot of gems next week. Probably going to be spending through anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000 gems next week, just on delves. So I wanted to preserve some of them, which is why we didn't throw as many on the most recent event. But yeah, this weapon's okay. It's obviously from the Corsair hero class, from getting 250 wins on it. It behaves very similarly to that of a Skeleton Key, except not exactly. It hits 2 random enemies instead of first and last. It has no extra turn on it. But the main thing that it has or 2 main things that it has that the other weapon doesn't, is it has a gold boost ratio off of both your team and the enemy team. So it's pretty good against a gold counter. So if you need to counter a team that's using a lot of gold, it's pretty good in that situation. And the other slight benefit it has is if there's only 1 troop remaining, it will double hit the 1 last troop, whereas Skeleton Key will not double hit if there's only 1 troop remaining. So overall, it is a weaker option, I would say, than that of Skeleton Key. However, still a good option nonetheless, and will very often still be clipping double kills, as you can see. You just cast it once, cast it again. Doesn't have the extra turn aspect, but it should easily be able to clean up those kills and still get the job done within 2 casts more often than not. But that's that weapon with the hero class, which of course just gives a bunch of blue, which helps with any kind of team where you end up needing a lot of blue, particularly blue Guild Wars. Anyways, I believe there was that the only team I wanted to show for now? Yeah, and the rest of these I just want to show, but not use. Okay, so the next one, we have Bounty Hunter. This is the main thing that I feel like I use Trickster Shot for these days, aside from like Tower of Doom occasionally. But the general premise for this is the Bounty Captain in first slot, followed by Trickster Shot, followed by Parrot, followed by Tagraki. This is generally how it goes. You use this as Plague Lord, you keep taking browns if you need barrier, you keep casting this weapon, every single green ends up diseasing a opposing enemy, and then you just keep tripping them down with Trickster Shot after Trickster Shot. You can also use Tagraki on whichever one you haven't torn the armor on yet, and you can keep getting a lot of true damage on that, and basically kill out the entire team just with true damage, with Parrot being your disable option with the silence, though you can also end up using other support troops like Ridgeback in order to mana generate, as well as the Empowered Cleanse. So there's several options that you can end up going for, but the general premise is Bounty Captain, Trickster, Support Troop, and Tagraki. And some kind of format of that is generally one of the better bounty teams that you can use. So pretty good to have Trickster Shots around for that. Next thing that we have is the raid event. This is the one I already showed and used, but here's the team again. And of course the copy paste for it will be below. Amanithrax Delve, this I'm just using the actual things from the kingdom. Farce Troll, Double King Gob Truffle with the Sugar Heart in case you want the cleanse. Of course, you don't necessarily need to cleanse as much, so you could just go throw a brown or green weapon there, or really anything, since it doesn't actually matter what color it is. While the kingdom does have to be green and brown restriction, your weapon, of course, can be whatever you want. Warden ends up working out pretty good because it has both Dispel to get rid of Submerge, so they can still keep doing their damage, as well as Green Storm so you can get the mana going. Also, it's not as important to be using Titan or any kind of elemental to get the half mana start, simply because you're going to be having enchant, so you're going to be getting all the mana anyways, since you're going to be doing it through a faction event. And lastly, we have the Hierophant class, which will be this Thursday. Easiest way to do this is just build a team around Queen Titania and Leprechaun. What weapon you use really just depends on what you want to use. You could just use Black Manacle. Any kind of AoE weapon will be perfectly fine. Not really one that you'd bother doing Mang on, because Queen Titania you could just use basically as your sole damage source if you really had to. And the Leprechauns are just there to constantly keep mana generating. And yeah, you could use Dawnbringer, you could use Black Manacle. Anything that hits all enemies will be perfectly fine. And then you just synergize it with Queen Titania that also does similarly. That ends up hitting all enemies. And you'll also be able to get some Fairy Fires to do even more damage. And should work out quite easily. But anyways, guys, that'll wrap it up for this video. If you still have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. Again, 4.5 patch is pretty close. We should be getting it probably in a few weeks. No official date has been given, but likely at this point, I would say early September is the most likely time that it's going to be coming. Though again, no official date yet, but should be right around the corner. And I'll be going over some more stuff for that tonight as well. We went over a little bit on the previous stream as well, but they just finally streamed it, so we'll have we'll be able to go a little bit more in depth into it than we were previously. But anyways, guys, just leave any comments below, and I will catch all of you later. Goodbye, everyone, and thanks for watching. Have a wonderful week.